we want to look at the second thing that God does to protect his vineyard. And stay with me, my brothers and sisters. I'm still in verse 2. Second thing he does, dig with, to protect his vineyard is he gathers out the stones. Yeah, it's right there in the verse. It's right there in the verse. Does this remind you of something? Gathering out the stones? It should remind you of a parable. Go to Matthew chapter 13. And we're going to explain this gathering out the stones. And after I explain what it is, ain't nobody going to have to ask you to shout. Because I'm going to explain what gathering out the stones mean. Right now, y'all thinking about going out there just picking up some rocks. That ain't what it means. Yeah, he gathers out the stones. Look at the parable in Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 9. Watch this. The same day went Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside. And a great multitude were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship. And he sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore, just waiting for the precious, powerful words to drip from the lip of Jesus. You know, Jesus was different from the other ones because they said the other folk, they taught from the authorities, but they said this man, he teaches with authority, might. He teaches and dead men get up. He teaches and stuff happens. So they were awaiting the fresh, powerful word that came from the lip of Jesus. And in verse 3 it said, and he spake many things unto them in parables. Parables is now earthly story with a heavenly meaning. He said, behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them. Then he said in verse 5, some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up because they had no deepness of earth. And then when the sun was up, they were scorched because they had no root, and they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. See, some folk actually get the word on Sunday, but you allow that situation to choke the word out of you. Yeah, he said right there, choked them, verse 8. But now other fell on good ground and brought forth leaves. Fruit. Yesterday, y'all, fruit. Some 100-fold, some 60-fold, or some 30. He who hath ears to listen, let him listen. He who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Did you see what happened in the first part of verse 5? Verse 5 fully explains the effect of stones in God's vineyard. More than anyone on this planet, God is aware that yes, even his children have stony problems in their lives, which left untouched and not taken out, they're going to inhibit growth and development. And Mike, until these things are picked up one by one, the vineyard has to be void of stones. Yeah. Watch this now. The perfect descriptions of stones in the life of any Christian is to call them what the Apostle Paul called them in Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 to 21. This is what Paul calls the works of the flesh. He said adultery, fornication. I ain't got to elaborate. Y'all know what them both mean. Uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, hearsays, murder, drunkenness, revelings. Paul said the works of the flesh, those are stones that you got to get out of the vineyard Because if you don't floor it, they're going to inhibit the growth. And if the stones are there, you're not going to be able to bear the fruit, because the stones is going to get in the way of the vines and the branches. God Almighty. What he's saying is anything that's in your life that would hinder the glory of God from being manifested, it has the effect like stones will produce on a farm. Second thing he said, I'm going to gather the stones out. Now there are two types of stones. The stones of sin, hamartia, missing the mark, where we miss the mark of God's righteousness. Yeah. Then there's transgressions. That's where we transgress the laws of God. And then there's iniquity, playing sin. I meant to do that. Yeah. I wrote my cuss words down because I didn't want to forget either one of them. Yeah, sin. Mike Hightower, see, woo. Our problem sometimes is that we do the thou shalt nots, and we don't do the thou shalts. We do the thou shalt nots, and we don't do the thou shalls. Thou shalt forgive thy brother. Well, I ain't feeling that. God's word has nothing to do with how you feel. I don't imagine Jesus on his way to Calvary with that wooden crossbeam on his back. I'm sure he wasn't feeling like having a good day. That didn't stop Jesus from going to Calvary. When they whipped him with that cat of nine tails and put skin off of his back and pulled flesh from him, I'm sure if one of the Romans with the whip said, how'd you feel? I'm sure he wouldn't have said, oh, pretty good. Has nothing to do with feeling. What do we get off talking about? I ain't feeling that. I'm talking about church folk who know what the Bible say and talking about I ain't feeling that. Well, ain't nobody asked you. He ain't never said feel it. Jesus said honor your mother and your father. He ain't said you need to feel this. He said husband love your wives. He didn't say I ain't feeling her no more. He didn't say that. Okay. The stones of sin. And then, Delbert, secondly, there's the stones of permanent destruction for your success. Yeah. Now let me get back to the first one, the stone of sin first. Because there's some folk, you got to remember that there's sins of omission and commission. There's sometimes you sin when you don't do nothing. Because you should have. Yeah. And then there's some things that obviously we know the one that you shouldn't do and you do. Oh yeah, because some folks say, you know what? Let me give you an example. Omission. You got another Christian come to you. They running down another one in the church, and you just sit there in agreement. You sinning. Because you need to stop them from, the Bible said, from spreading mess and gossip. And obviously they don't care too much about you because they throwing trash on you. And you don't care enough about yourself to say, this is not waste management. You take that trash to say. In fact, let's text the other person right now. I'm going to text them everything you saying. And if you man and you woman enough, you talk to them. Come to me, Reb, did you hear about it? I'm going to hear about it sooner or later. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to hear about it. It's going to get to me. Yeah, but you just don't be so quick to tell. Always tell on yourself first, and then tell on the other person who you came to tell on. Tell on yourself first. And we'll deal with you, and then we'll deal with the other person. The stones of permanent destruction of your success. As long as any one of these remains, growth and development, Dorothy, will be blocked. And the whole essence of planting the vineyard will be defeated. Because you don't plant the vineyard with rocks in mind for the vineyard. Watch this, Andrew. The devil himself, the author and finisher of sin, he threw stones into a beautiful garden that we know as the Garden of Eden. In the beginning, God created everything. Everything was good. It wasn't until the devil threw stones in the vineyard that human beings came disobedient. Check the record. They was walking with him, Jehovah. And when he threw them stones in the vineyard, now that don't mean they had to pick them up, but they had something else to look at. And consequently, all of the evil things follow. Now let me help you with these stones and show you why it's important for him to gather out the stones. Okay? We go back to Matthew. In days of old, and especially Palestine, Monique, one of the cruel methods of dealing with an enemy permanently was not just fighting his army. Watch this. But it was to throw stones into his land and into his wells to destroy the country's source of food and water. Because you couldn't get food back then with no water, Kevin. And you had to drink something. This was done to make sure that after the war was over, it would be impossible and difficult to fully recover again. Go with me. I got a proof text. Go to 2 Kings. Go to 2 Kings. I got to prove myself. 2 Kings. 2 Kings. And when you get to 2 Kings, I need you to go to chapter 3. This will make sense in a minute. 2 Kings chapter 3. And when you get to chapter 3, I need you to go to verses 24 and 25. Remember what I said, that in days old, if you wanted to really cruelly mess up an enemy permanently, you didn't just fight his army, but you put stone in the land and in the wells so that he wouldn't have a water supply. This was done, once again, to ensure that after the war, it will be difficult, baby, for you to survive. And I'm going to bring that to us in a minute, Kevin. But I need to show you. You with me? 2 Kings chapter 3. Watch verse 24 and 25. And when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and smote the Moabites, so that they fled before them. But they went forward, smiting the Moabites, even in the country. Watch verse 25, Caitlin. And they beat down the cities, and on every good piece of land, look, follow me, y'all, paid, on every good piece of land cast every man his stone, and he filled it, and they stopped all the wells of water and felled all the good trees. Did y'all see that? Thus, my brothers and my sisters, if there is ever to be a complete redemptive work, the stones are going to have to be gathered out. God Almighty. Because God can't plant nothing on a stone. You will not get fruit from a stone. So he has to move the stones out so he can plant the right vine that will produce the fruit he wants to be produced. Watch this, Chris Jones. Some of your enemy stones that they thrown at you is to block your success in life. Yeah. They don't want you to recover. And they're trying to stop your water supply of water and bread. Deacon Richard, let me see. You say, Rep, what are you talking about? Somebody will take the stone of divorce and throw it in your vineyard thinking that this will permanently cripple this lady or this man. I will stop their water supply and their bread supply by this stone of divorce, and they will never be able to recover. They want to mess you up. Somebody else, Kevin, takes the stone that they have a settlement and that you didn't get, and they throw that stone in. And because of the settlement they got, they leave you with nothing, and that's their intent. Some people with that little bitty breakup, they throw the stone of breakup in your life, wishing that you will never be able to recover from this breakup and shakeup. Some people will take the stone of termination or unemployment.